Hey, so this is the inaugural um, interview of the Way Forward. This is the first one we're doing, and we're more than happy and thrilled actually to have Ginny Kerslake to have as our first guest. She is running to be a state rep in Harrisburg for the 167th district, and can't wait to talk to her. So, hey, Ginny, welcome to the Way Forward.
Hi,
I know
Karen. It's a pleasure. I wish I was with you guys in person, but this is what we do now.
this is what we do indeed, Brady Bunch style in our little
Yes,
boxes.
we're dating ourselves.
um, so, first of all, how's your family doing during this crisis? Everything, you guys all right, and everybody safe and sound?
Yeah, we're good. Our older son lives close by in Exton, and our younger son is a student at University of British Columbia. So he's out there, and he's well. He's happy. Finished his semester and started a summer job, and was able to do that.
Good.
Our income has not been impacted. I figure we are probably the most fortunate, and goes all the way from people with younger families trying to juggle schoolwork to people who are concerned about how they're going to pay rent. And I heard a quote recently, we're not all in the same boat, we're all in the same storm here. And that's so true. And, we are very fortunate in our house, in our family.
That is a good quote. So tell us something about the district that you are seeking to represent. What do you love about it?
So we've lived here for 15 years in West Whiteland, and that is on the western edge of the district. It goes all the way east to Devon, and then north up into Chester Springs in Charlestown and West Pikeland, and then it goes down to Willistown. So you have a mixture of mainline and west of mainline small communities. We've got Malvern Borough in there, and then all around that we have this beautiful countryside, which to me is the true treasure of Chester County. When we moved here from Canada and we were looking for a home, we wanted to be close to this beautiful countryside that we discovered as avid runners and bikers and hikers, and it's so nice to have that mix, and this district really reflects that mix.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As a cyclist, I get to see your signs everywhere now, and I know that I'm in Ginny Kerslake country because it's all beautiful. It's like all these 2-lane country roads everywhere. It's like perfect for running and cycling.
And it's really been nice for me as we deliver some of these yard signs. And earlier in the election years, we were knocking thousands of doors to be in smaller communities, like Berwyn and Devon and Malvern Borough, just some really nice small towns.
So what made you want to represent them in Harrisburg?
Well, I feel very strongly that we need representation that puts us first. A representative that's going to stand up for families and communities and for the environment that we treasure and that is so important for our futures. So first and foremost, that's why.
So this is a district that was flipped from red to blue in 2018. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that you are doing a lot of work to make sure that it remains a blue seat. And yeah. How are you engaging voters in this time of the pandemic? I imagine it's been challenging.
Yeah, first of all, it's very important that we hold this seat. We want to flip the state house, and then we can really start making some things happen in Harrisburg. Flipping the state house doesn't just mean, flipping those 9 seats that we need, but it also means holding the seats that we already have. So we're campaigning hard, and in a way that we never imagined we would have to campaign. Fortunately, I have an excellent group. My campaign manager has years and years of experience and success running other state house races, as you know, and an incredible army of volunteers. And so we were able to adapt really easily as the situation evolved. really over a couple weeks, mid-March, we went from having a heavy canvassing effort. Between January and mid-March, we knocked up about 8,000 doors. And then when we started to pivot to, okay, there was like a half day where we said, okay, we can't do that. We're going to lit drop. And then again, the orders changed. And so we totally dropped any kind of effort in the field and switched to phone banking. And so we've been doing that to reach voters, and we're calling them to check in on them, provide them with information about how to vote by mail, and then talk about why this race is so critical. And we've ended up having some great conversations. People are at home, people want to have conversations, and they're grateful for that information. A lot of people have requested vote by mail ballots, and some people are worried about where is my ballot. So we're able to answer questions for them.
That's great, Ginny. And I imagine that you've talked to more voters at this point, more neighbors than almost anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense of what concerns them at this moment in time right now? Like, what are you hearing most about? Is it exclusively COVID related, or are they concerned about other things as well?
It's a bit of a mix. I would say most people, and again, we're making so many of these calls, more than any race in the county for sure. Most people seem to be doing okay. I do remember a call a couple weeks ago where it was a husband and wife, and they both actually had tested positive. That's the only case where I actually talked to people who had. Most people are, they're concerned about what the future is going to look like economically, when we're going to open up. Everybody is on board with this being a communal effort. So that's always top on people's minds. But when we start talking about the issues they're concerned about remain the same: environment, education, healthcare, and in this district, having their calls answered, having your representative being present. So those are the kind of conversations we're having when we get to that point.
And do you have a way of sort of explaining to voters what your vision of government is? Like when you're calling voters and they're expressing their concerns about environment and education and all these things, like how does like your vision of government compare to the current representation that we have in Harrisburg?
Well, I've talked to people on a number of issues. So it's not just pipeline related, but also a few of the other ones are special education needs, special adult needs, even racism within our communities, and digital billboards. And by and large, they are looking for somebody who really listens to them. First of all, returns their calls, listens to them, understands their need, and is actively looking for solutions to them, more than just saying, "Yep, I heard you," and that's it. That's what I expect from my government, and that's what I would bring to it. I'm not. My reason for running is to do that, is to be of service to people. Yeah.
That's a pretty good reason. I know you have an interesting story about how you got involved in politics to begin with.
Yeah, I
do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. I never imagined that I would be here running for office. If you told me 5 years ago, I would have just laughed at you. But when the Mariner East Pipeline project hit our community, and that happened to coincide with just after Donald Trump got elected. Like so many people, I was wondering, what can I do? How can I make a difference? And it kind of landed right on our front doorstep. So part of that, I became a community leader, helping to organize our community, to raise awareness, to educate people, and to advocate for our rights. And what we realized quickly on is that something like this is allowed to happen because we don't have people in Harrisburg saying, hell no, you can't do this. People putting, representatives putting people and the planet ahead of corporate profit, standing up to the Marcellus Shale Coalition that is so strong in Harrisburg, and certain trade unions, especially on our side of the aisle. So as you know, in 2018, Danielle Freelawton stepped up to run for State House. And, you know, she never imagined she'd do that. When she asked me to be her campaign manager, I said, I don't know how to do that. And we did it. And we did this amazing thing, flipping that district that is so skewed against against Democrats. But it's not just enough to have Danielle there. We need more. We need more for Chester County. We need more for Pennsylvania, so that we can build this coalition of leaders that are going to put those interests first, to our interests first, and work with people across the aisle too. I mean, this is a nonpartisan fight that we're in here. It really cuts down to the health and safety of families and communities and our futures. It cuts down to property rights. That's something my neighbors and I are dealing with right at this moment. So, so that's how I ended up doing this crazy thing of running for office and challenging an incumbent Democrat.
And when you're speaking to neighbors, do you get the sense that your vision aligns more closely with theirs than the current representation they have in Harrisburg?
Yes, yes, and it's also, it's not even just a Democratic thing. It's this, and we saw that again in Danielle's race. This is an issue and a type of representation, a constituent focus of representation that ends up getting Republicans to cross party lines and getting independents to say, yes, I'm going to get out there and vote for that person. Because that's what they're looking for too. They're tired of party politics. You know, I'm not a politician. I'm an everyday person that sees a need for stronger leadership. I'm a Democrat that sees the need for leadership that's going to push Harrisburg in the direction of our democratic values.
And I know you've been very engaged in politics, at least since the Mariner East project and probably before then. And to the extent that you're paying attention to how votes are breaking in Harrisburg, are there a couple of votes that you want to tell us about where you would have done things differently than the incumbent has at this point?
Well, in the past year, when the election has been looming, people have been very careful of that. So there's not specifically a vote that I would have done differently. See, that's the difference. When you actually look at the votes, there wouldn't be a big difference between us. But what we need is not somebody who's just going to push the button and vote the right way. We need people who are actually going to put new legislation forward and fight for things. So that's the one thing. There was a bill that was brought up for a vote in the House recently, and the incumbent voted the way that I would have voted. They would have voted no, and that was for subsidies to go to cracker plants, and there was a lot of pressure on the floor to the Chester County reps from the building trades to vote in support of that. It was a Republican bill, and Governor Wolf ended up vetoing it, but they wanted extra votes to break the veto power, and it didn't happen. And I think it didn't happen because it's an election year and because we have some contested races, especially mine. I mean, I'm somebody who definitely would not have voted yes for that. We should not be putting tax dollars into that. And we should not be investing in more plastics infrastructure and pipeline infrastructure at a time when we should be dialing back on all of that.
Ginny, it seems like we need to start thinking of ways to build bridges with the building trades. I mean, they are a natural ally of the Democrats, and it seems like they are short-sighted on this issue.
Yeah.
Is there a way to reach out to them and come to some compromise on matters that affect the environment?
Yeah, I think I would look forward to the opportunity to sit down at the table and have those discussions and build that coalition, because we're all for family sustaining jobs. We're all for health and safety in the workplace. All these things that unions fight for, I do too as well. And but when it comes to building pipelines and building cracker plants, those aren't great jobs. And that whole industry is a boom and bust economy. It's not sustainable. What we really want to do is bring those great jobs into renewable energy. We already have the Pennsylvania Department of Labor reports, I believe it's, I may not have the numbers quite right, but I believe it's something like 60,000 jobs in renewable energy versus 20,000 jobs in fossil fuels. And fossil fuels is such a big chunk now. So it just stands to reason that the more we move away from fossil fuels, the more jobs we're going to create. So as we make this transition, we have to keep in mind what this means to those workers. When we have to create good jobs for them, but we also have to create alternative opportunities for them. Maybe they want to have opportunities to go to school or start a business or something like that. We need to provide that support, not just in this industry, but other industries, which, we're entering. Things are probably changed right now because of the pandemic, but we are about, or maybe they've actually advanced because of the pandemic, but in all kinds of industry, healthcare is another one I'm thinking of. We're going to see some fundamental change. That's the way we're moving, and we're going to need to work with the unions on that.
Eric, do you have anything?
Yes. If you were to win the seat, you're going to be entering into a state house that is dominated by Republicans and a state Senate that is Republican-led. And clearly, it makes it difficult for legislators to get their stuff done. Do you have a strategy for working across the aisle, and how do you maintain your strength and independence when you're a minority?
Right. Well, okay, first of all, let's be super optimistic and say that we win the state house, which is a very good possibility. We also have a possibility of winning 4 Senate seats. There's some Chester County races that are particularly important in that. But even if we don't, if we're in the same sort of boats, there are issues. And again, we talk about the pipeline issue, where you can work together. You can work within your party. You can reach across the aisle. That's something that I've been doing for the past 3 years in this fight for public health and safety. We've worked with leaders that are Republicans and Democrat. We have people who have been elected on both sides of the aisle that are our allies. So I'm used to doing that, working in a nonpartisan way. And another issue that comes to mind is gun safety reform. It's a nonpartisan fight that we want to have. Safety in our families and schools and communities. And there's a lot of support on the other side of the aisle for certain reforms that we could put into place. We just need to work together on that.
Now, in talking to some of the newer representatives, particularly Danielle Friel-Otten and Katie Moot, they reflect on getting their seat and kind of sticking to their values and not viewing this as a career opportunity more as I'm standing by my morals and my values. Is that how you feel as you enter, or you might enter into a seat in the state house?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm going in to represent my values, to represent the people. And if you can stick to that, no matter what happens, um, you can feel good about it, and the people you represent can feel good about it. I mean, that's what our government was based on, right? It wasn't based on people going into a seat and staying there for terms and terms. It was based on people taking their experience, their strengths, their community's values, taking that into office and using that for a specific amount of time, and then going back. That's why we have term limits. That's why it shouldn't be so unorthodox for me to be challenging an incumbent. I mean, that's how we're set up. Every 2 years, you defend your seat. You give an opportunity for a new voice. That's why we have these elections every 2 years. And yeah, at the end of the day, my boss would not be Governor Wolf. I would like to be able to work with Governor Wolf on the issues. I think he's doing a great job in lots of respects, and he saves us from a lot of bad things getting through. But ultimately, my boss is not Governor Wolf. My boss is the people who I represent.
Well, it's very refreshing to hear all that, because, in the world when everybody voted for somebody who wanted to drain the swamp but didn't hold any values, that was hard and really was just there to hold power. It's nice to hear that refreshing viewpoint.
I do have, that brings to mind this idea of, we have this thing going on right now where we say vote for any Democrat, and I get that. We really do need change in Washington. But at the same time, we are also expecting a lot of Republicans to change their vote and, help us change Washington. So we really have to be careful with that messaging as Democrats, that we really have to vote for the person. And hopefully we're putting great people. But I'm very cognizant of that argument, because we're trying to say to Republicans, how can you vote for that? Vote here. But then when people say, I would never not vote Democrat in any kind of race, it's kind of messaging that we have to be careful of while we're asking Republicans to vote for our presidential choice nominee.
Now, as a businessman, and a small businessman, I've experienced some of the difficulties with some of Governor Wolf's essential, non-essential businesses, and talking to a lot of small business people, and certainly a certain portion of them being Republicans. They've had some issues with the transparency in declaring an essential business essential and a non-essential business non-essential. And I'll give my case, the scenario where Home Depot and a Lowe's and a Walmart could run a garden center, but a garden center couldn't run a garden center. And when asked for transparency, and I know that this was on both sides of the aisle, and I think led largely by Republicans, saying, why did you declare certain people essential and others? We did not see the transparency. How would you approach that issue as a representative?
Yeah, we should see that transparency. We're upset in our community here. We experienced the same sort of thing. Now, it wasn't a financial impact, but it was certainly a public health and mental health situation. Governor Wolf and the committee gave special treatment to Sunoco for Mariner East construction. They got a waiver right across the road from my neighborhood. Back in March, the same time as, there were other very contested waivers. And I came out and spoke out against that, spoke out in opposition. It's not fair for some of these businesses, some of these corporations to get special treatment, while small business owners and families, all sorts of different situations, are making sacrifices in the interest of public health. It is so wrong. And in terms of Mariner East and having those workers in our communities, living in hotels, going, just coming and going, even crossing state lines to do this work. It was a real concern of ours. So I opposed it. By contrast, my opponent actually supported it, supported the special waiver going to Sunoco in March. And there's a clear difference there. And you're right, there was no transparency in that.
Now, you brought up another subject that we touched on lately here about education. And Pennsylvania is known for its terrible disparity in its education, particularly people of color, and the unfair funding and the balance in funding the state. How do you stand on that issue?
Yeah, I recognize it as a problem. I believe we're something like 47th. I'm not sure if that's changed in the last year, but 47th in the nation for state funding of our public schools. We rely very heavily on local funding. Of course, we do have some parity payments, but it's still an issue. So yeah, that's it. The quality of your public education should not depend on your zip code. We have communities that are already disadvantaged for a number of economic and other reasons, and then those children are further disadvantaged by not having the same sort of quality public education that other groups have. We see it within my district. There's other districts where it's even more clear, the difference.
Yeah. Now, as we go into the results or the effects of the economic effects of the COVID restrictions, and obviously it will hamper state budgets where a budget has to be balanced at the state level. There'll certainly be an impetus on the part of conservatives to balance that budget by cutting funding to programs such as education and healthcare and to people of the most need. How do you think you could approach this responsibly with this budget deficit that surely will loom? And how do we handle that services? And how do you handle it possibly with even tax raises? Right.
Well, as you know, I haven't worked on state budgets yet, but I do think that you always have to put the interests of the people first. And too often in Harrisburg and elsewhere, the interests of powerful lobbyists and corporations are being put ahead of that, and it cuts right to the budget. Often we give subsidies and special breaks to developers, corporations that don't really need it. The fossil fuel industry, for example, gets $3 billion a year in subsidies. There are ways that we can cut back on that and not hurt and hopefully help, even in this new environment we're going to be in the next little while. We can help the people who need it the most. I mean, we do have, even in Chester County, the wealthiest county, we have so many people that are on the verge of homelessness, living paycheck to paycheck, that are one medical bill away from financial ruin. And we need to always keep that in mind and not burden them further, and hopefully make their situations better, even in that tough environment we're going to be in.
Now, we touched on this before, but you're reaching out to the other side, the aisles, and the nonpartisan issues that you suggest. You feel your strength has been there when you talk to people on the phone or have been campaigning, that your message has touched them as far as this is an issue that, whether it be gun control or gun / rights versus the Mariner East, you feel that these are truly nonpartisan issues?
Well, not so much talking to voters right now, because obviously, since it's a primary, we're only talking to Democrats. So I don't have a sense from making those calls to voters. I do know, just from being out in the community, working so hard on Mariner for the last few years, that it's truly an issue that crosses party lines. Conversations we have in the community and on social media, on that issue. I also know, I know a good number of people that have already that are switching parties in order to make me be the candidate that they can vote for, even though it's crossing party lines. So, Democrats that are saying, I really want you to be, I want to be able to vote for you in November. So I'm going to make that move. I do know from talking to thousands of voters in 2018 in Danielle's race as her campaign manager, knocking doors, and that's the summer of 2018. We talked to a lot of independents and Republicans, and these issues. The things that we care the most about, we all care about. It boils right down to our families and our communities being safe where we live, making sure our children have what they need. If it's older people, that we stay in our homes. There's core issues that differentiate the two parties, but I see a lot of core values that cross party lines.
It is amazing, like when you don't get your information filtered through some other source that is twisting it or propagandizing it in some way, and it's just coming straight from the person who wants to be a representative standing at your door saying, this is what I stand for, don't you stand for the same things?
Yeah, I'll bring my Canadian back into it, but I was actually surprised here. I think it was the 2008 election, I believe, and I was running with some friends of mine, and I started talking about politics, and I realized, oh, we don't talk about politics, do we? It suddenly got very quiet, and I think I was the only Democrat, so what I was talking about wasn't something that they wanted to talk about. But in this country, we're exceptional in a different kind of way, in that we don't talk about politics. And I wish we could talk about these issues a little more openly, because then we would understand that we're much more alike than we are different.
I don't get that either. I'm not originally from this country either, and I don't understand the whole we don't discuss politics.
Yeah,
like,
Stephen,
why not? Let's air it out.
For you, yeah. Give us the
Talk
good.
religion. Yeah,
It's religion. I get it, but politics should not be equated with religion, and I think that might be the problem these days.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Here's another thing that how I would be different than the incumbent and a lot of politicians per se in the seat is that I recognize that, and I try to stay away from it. I was at a town hall a couple months ago that our state rep was hosting, and it was actually on the opioid crisis, and that's how that was it was put forward. We're going to have this discussion. People from the community come, and so there were, I don't know, maybe like 15 people from the community in the room, and the conversation started to turn into a political conversation, and very much against Donald Trump, and the Republicans are doing this, Republicans are doing that, and I sat there thinking, this is a community event. This is not a Democratic event. Everybody should feel welcome here, and we shouldn't be bashing. It shouldn't be a political discussion. And a woman actually got up and said, this is not what I came here for, and stormed out. And our state rep allowed that discussion to get there. And I see it from other elected officials at different levels, that they will be partisan. You can't be that as an elected official. You have to represent everybody, whatever their party is. And you're not going to build bridges. You're not going to have these open conversations. You're not going to make everybody feel welcome to come and bring their problems to you if you're too partisan. I mean, we all acknowledge we need a different president. We all acknowledge we have certain issues that we feel strongly about as Democrats, and they differ from Republicans. But you can speak about things in a nonpartisan way.
Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about some very important endorsements that you've gotten? Because I know those are very meaningful to you. Sure. I'm sure you have to work hard for them.
Yes. I I think what I'd like to say first is it's difficult. It's difficult as somebody who's challenging an incumbent when it comes to endorsements, because there's pressure. There's sometimes an obligation for some of these groups to endorse an incumbent over a challenger. So regardless of their strengths, that's just what happens. So that's something I've had to deal with. But I'm very proud of the organizations who have been bold enough to endorse me or give me distinction. And that's Chester County Stands Up. I am the endorsed candidate in this race. And in Chester County, I share that with Don Beamazal and Danielle Friel-Otten. Food and Water Action. They are an environmental group, and I've done a lot of work with them in the past. They recognize me as the environmental leader in this, and that I will bring real change to Harrisburg. Vote Pro-Choice is another group. Moms Demand Action. I'm a candidate of distinction with them. I've also been a member of that group in Chester County, so I'm proud to now be a candidate of distinction. They are the nation's largest gun safety reform group, and they grew. It's since Sandy Hook. They grew from a Facebook page to 6 million members, and then also Proud Pennsylvania, which is an organization that's started by Judy Wicks of the White Dog Cafe fame, who has now turned into an environmental champion. Not just an environmental champion, but she started another group recently where she is building coalitions between local businesses and trying to bring locally sourced foods and products to the forefront. And all of that has to do with sustainability, financially, community, environmental. Yeah, so I think I got all the groups.
That's a pretty good crew. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. These are groups that actually look at what you stand for, look at what you've done, look at what you bring to the table, and look at the strength of your campaign, and they've boldly made those endorsements. So I thank them for it.
We're super grateful that you spent some time talking to us this afternoon. And so can you let us know a little bit about how Way Forward members can help your campaign if they so choose?
Yes. Well, it would bring me great joy to say, join me knocking doors, but obviously we can't be doing that right now. But we have 3.5 weeks now until the primary election. This election is so critical for my race. I mean, this is it. So right now we are doing phone banking. We have a really great effort going there. We would love it if Way Forward members could join us in that. If they go to my website, ginny4pa.com, that's GINNY, there it is right behind me, the number 4pa.com, and they click the Get Involved tab, there's a form they can fill out, and phone bank is one of the options. If you would take a yard sign, if you happen to live in the district, and again, the district is West Whiteland, East Whiteland, Malvern Borough, West Pikeland, Charlestown, Willistown, and Easttown. If you live in any of those townships or Malvern Borough, you can vote for me. You can tell your friends to vote for me. You can do get a yard sign to put in. If you have the means to donate to a campaign, donations large and small are greatly appreciated. Because we can't knock doors, we have to reach voters in different ways. So we have a mail program going on that's very strategically done, and digital ads. So that's another way people can help. But the phone banking is really great. And we've also just started doing some postcarding. So if you don't feel comfortable doing phone banking, postcarding is a great way to do that. And we're doing some virtual parties. So you can grab a tea or grab a glass of wine and sit down with a stack of postcards. We supply the materials, the cards and stamps, and kind of a nice way to stay in touch.
Sounds good.
I think I got everything there too.
That was great. Eric, anything else?
Well, I just want to say that having met you, Ginny, several times, that a certain nonpartisan issue is integrity, intelligence, and passion, and you have them all. I wish you all thank you. You're running. So
Thank
good
you.
luck, and we're behind you.
Thank you so much.